Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly fascinating concept, how the physical earth beneath our feet literally dictates business destiny. We're looking at the commercial geography of Pakistan, really digging into its economic landscape and regional business potential. If you've ever stopped to wonder why a massive factory gets built in one specific random town, or how a single highway can completely flip a nation's economy upside down, well, you're in the exact right place. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's our roadmap for today. First, mapping business to geography. Second, Pakistan's resource landscape. Third, powerhouses and key industrial clusters. Fourth, infrastructure and global trade. And finally, future trends and opportunities. All right, part one, mapping business to geography. Why do certain industries thrive in specific areas? Seriously, think about it for a second. Why isn't literally every city a tech hub? Why isn't every coastal town a massive, booming shipping port? A business doesn't just randomly drop a pin on a map, blindfolded, and build a factory. There is a deep, underlying logic to exactly where commerce happens. And that logic is what we call commercial geography. It's this brilliant branch of human geography that studies how geographical factors, things like location, climate, resources, and transport, influence trade and commercial activities. I absolutely love this concept because it shows that geography isn't just about memorizing maps or borders from high school. It is fundamentally about the bottom line. It's a giant puzzle that explains how products actually move from producers to consumers and why the global economy looks the way it does. When a multinational corporation decides where to place its next mega factory, believe me, they aren't looking at a political map. They're studying commercial geography to shave pennies off of every single unit they produce. The scope here is honestly massive. It's an incredibly interdisciplinary field. We're talking about the distribution of natural resources, like who actually has the coal, the gas, or the most fertile agricultural land. That dictates what can even be made in the first place. We're looking at where industries locate and form clusters, the physical trade and transport networks that hook them all up, and how globalization and economic blocks impact trade agreements. It even covers urban versus rural commercial patterns and, this is super crucial today, sustainability and environmental factors like carbon footprints and climate change. It's the ultimate intersection of economics, the environment, and trade, where a single shift in a transport network can literally alter global prices. Moving right along to Section 2, Pakistan's resource landscape. Now, what's really interesting about this is bridging the gap between abstract geography and actual business decisions. Let's zoom in on Pakistan to see this in real-world action. If you're a business owner, your factory's location and production planning are entirely dependent on resource availability. Your delivery timelines, they rely heavily on transport and infrastructure. Even your product design is completely shaped by the demographics and culture of the region you operate in, and you certainly can't ignore environmental risks when planning site insurance or long-term sustainability. Plus, every single regional policy dictates where you're going to invest and how you'll plan your taxes. Geography dictates strategy at every single level, transforming physical landscapes into literal balance sheets. And when we apply that lens to Pakistan, the diversity is just striking. Each province brings a completely different asset to the national economy, kind of acting like specialized gears in a massive economic engine. Punjab dominates in agriculture, textiles, and SME manufacturing. It's essentially the breadbasket and the weaving loom of the nation. Sindh acts as the commercial gateway, heavily reliant on its seaports, oil, finance, and heavy industry, especially around the mega city of Karachi. Then you've got Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, or KP, leveraging its unique terrain for hydropower, mining, and vital cross-border trade. Balochistan holds these massive, largely untapped mineral reserves and the crucial Gwadar port, which presents huge future potential. And finally, Gilgit-Baltistan contributes through regional trade via the high-altitude Khunjarab Pass, alongside tourism, dry fruits, and precious gemstones. It's a perfect textbook example of regional resource distribution. All right, Section 3, Powerhouses, Key Industrial Clusters. Let's zoom in even further to the micro level, to something called industrial clusters. These are geographically concentrated areas where firms, suppliers, and related industries operate in a very specific field. Why do they do this? Well, because when businesses group together, they create this sort of economic gravity. They benefit immensely from shared infrastructure, a pooled network of specialized labor, and deep institutional knowledge. If you're manufacturing a specific product, you want to be right there where the best suppliers and the most skilled workers already live and breathe that exact industry. That kind of proximity creates a massive competitive advantage. To see how this works in practice, let's contrast two very different clusters. On one side, you have Faisalabad's textile cluster, which is often called the Manchester of Pakistan. It features a fully integrated value chain. I mean, everything from spinning the yarn to weaving, dyeing, and final garment production happens right there in this massive, structured hub, which creates immense efficiencies. On the flip side, look at Wazirabad's cutlery cluster. This area relies on a proud colonial-era legacy of crafting stainless steel knives and utensils. It's 90% export-oriented, which is incredible, but unlike Faisalabad, it currently struggles with outdated machinery and weak branding. It perfectly highlights how different geographical and historical paths lead to completely differing modern-day scales and challenges. Now, let's move to Sialkot and see how this builds over time. The surgical instruments industry there has an incredible historical timeline. It all started back in the late 19th century during the British colonial era. Local craftsmen just began repairing and making really simple tools. Then, during World War II, global demand absolutely surged, and Sialkot stepped right up to the plate, gaining international recognition for producing high-quality, low-cost medical supplies for the war effort. Post-independence, families and entrepreneurs just kept refining their craft. Today, it has become Pakistan's leading light engineering export sector, packed with ISO-certified SMEs producing highly precise scissors, forceps, and scalpels for the entire world. Just how big is this cluster today? $400 million. Let that number sink in. That is Sialkot's annual export value for surgical instruments alone. This single city controls an unbelievable 95% of Pakistan's entire surgical export market, sending highly specialized products straight to hospitals in the US, Germany, France, you name it. That is the sheer economic power of a highly specialized geographic cluster operating at peak efficiency. But get this, Sialkot isn't just about surgical tools. They also boast an absolutely massive sports goods cluster. They literally produce world-class FIFA World Cup footballs, they employ over 100,000 workers, and they've heavily invested in advanced thermal bonding technology. But here is the craziest, most impressive part of their story. These local entrepreneurs didn't just sit back and build products. They basically manipulated their own commercial geography. When they realized they needed better access to global markets, they didn't wait around for outside help. No, they pioneered private sector infrastructure, building their own Sialkot dry port. And incredibly, they built the privately funded Sialkot International Airport. They essentially terraformed their own economic destiny to ensure their cluster thrived globally. It is an absolute masterclass in geographical adaptation. Which brings us nicely to Section 4, Infrastructure and Global Trade. Let's zoom back out for a second and look at the massive physical networks that connect these localized clusters like Sialkot to the rest of the planet. Pakistan relies on a really complex web of road, rail, air, and sea networks to access global markets. This is a vital, foundational concept in commercial geography. You could manufacture the best, most cost-effective products on Earth, like those surgical instruments, but without transportation infrastructure, those products will just sit collecting dust in a warehouse. Physical connectivity is, without a doubt, the absolute lifeblood of international trade. Let's detail these specific geographic choke points and gateways because they literally dictate the flow of billions of dollars. Down south, you have Karachi Port. This is the absolute workhorse of the country, handling roughly 60% of the nation's entire cargo. Right nearby is Port Qasim, which is absolutely critical for energy imports that keep all those industrial clusters running. Then, looking towards the future, you have Gwadar Port, the crown jewel of the China-Pakistan economic corridor, acting as a deep-water gateway to Central Asia. Up north, the Kunjarab Pass facilitates Silk Route trade with China through some towering, incredibly difficult mountain terrain. And of course, the vital border crossings at Torkham, Chaman, and Wagah. These are not just dots on a map, guys. They are the physical valves controlling the nation's economic heartbeat and connecting domestic producers to millions of global consumers. And finally, we land on Section 5, Future Trends and Opportunities. So the crucial point is, how is all of this shifting as we look forward into the 21st century? Well, while the foundation is strong, the landscape is highly competitive and rapidly changing. Let's weigh the harsh challenges against the massive opportunities. On the challenge side, you've got serious infrastructure gaps, like power shortages, and we already saw how legacy clusters can struggle with outdated machinery. There are policy barriers, bureaucracy, and fierce global competition, whether it's China in ceramics and textiles or Germany in surgical tools. But look at the opportunities. CPAC has the potential to completely transform regional trade hubs, integrating them globally. The rise of digital logistics and e-commerce means a small, skilled furniture maker in Chiniot can now sell directly to a buyer in the USA, completely bypassing traditional bottlenecks. And crucially, there is a massive push towards sustainability and green energy, harnessing the incredible hydropower potential in KP and the vast solar capabilities in Balochistan to power the next generation of industry. Which leaves us with this final, pretty overarching thought to consider. As technology bridges physical distances through e-commerce and green energy reshapes exactly where and how we produce goods, how will shifting geography redefine global trade hubs in the 21st century? Will the traditional historical clusters adapt and modernize? Or are we going to see completely new economic hubs emerge on the map? It's a thrilling question for anyone interested in the future of global commerce. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring the map.